Now that we talked about what federalism is, and I want to move on to the two basic kinds of federalism: dual federalism and shared federalism. Dual federalism is the simpler form of the two. It leaves the states and national government presiding over mutually exclusive spheres of sovereignty. Effectively, what this means is that the states and national governments have their own responsibilities with no overlap and clear divisions. However, in practice, we've never divided authority so neatly. The second and more accurate conception of federalism is called shared or cooperative federalism. It recognizes that the national and state governments jointly supply services to the citizenry, with significant overlap and cooperation between the two different levels of government. Over the years, progressive nationalization has moved American federalism from mostly dual to mostly shared. As a side note, I'm legally required to make the bad analogy every American government class uses, and you compare cooperative federalism to a marble cake, where the chocolate and vanilla are interlaced with no way of separating them. This is compared to dual federalism to a layer cake, where the chocolate and vanilla are separated and you can have a chocolate layer and a vanilla layer separately if you so choose. The better analogy is obviously the Neapolitan ice cream box, where the chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry are separate, versus rainbow sherbet, where all the flavors are swirled together. So, if you ever wanted to think about what type of desserts were best represented by federalism, there you go. So, how have we gotten to where we are today? How has our federalism gotten to this point of, the issues we have, resolving the collective action problems, the different rules and structures we've created to try to solve these issues? As we've talked about before, the idea in a lot of the contract thinkers of the 1700s was if you created a government basically perfectly, you could override the bad impulses of the men who governed us rather than the angels who we want to govern us. Well, so we look to nationalization for these solutions. And this is the big reason it's become the major way of solving states' conflicts between each other. There's three typical types of problems here we're going to talk about: coordination problems, reneging or shirking, and cutthroat competition. Coordination problems tend to happen on issues where states have the same needs but have different ways of resolving them. This can lead to difficulty in coordinating standards or the provision of resources across the different states. The first example I wanted to give here was driver's license laws. Each of the 50 states has their own rules for getting a driver's license, which can cause problems. Specifically, we'd need interstate truckers to get licenses in several states, and then they could maintain a valid license even if one of them was suspended or taken away. When this happened, we had unsafe drivers who had their privileges taken away, still driving, and potentially causing problems and hurting people. And because there's no coordination among the 50 states, there's no way to solve this. So, what did we do? Well, we created a bureau within the Federal Department of Transportation, or the DOT as I like to call it, to centralize records of traffic violations. It was much easier to create a centralized record-keeping organization than to require each state to update its record with those of every other state. Getting them to cooperate, getting them to work on this database, it's going to be too much, right? Who pays for it? Who's responsible for it? What happens if you're not responsible? Just have the federal government do it. It's easier, it's cleaner, it fixes the problem. You get unsafe drivers off the road, everybody's happy, I guess, except the unsafe drivers. Similarly, we see the regulation of the electricity industry. Back in the night, state-level policy made sense. But today, the power grid goes across the continent, and suppliers weave across state lines. Dominion Power here in Virginia, actually, it's called Dominion of Virginia, but it works in North Carolina as well for some reason. With fragmented regulation, we saw the need for intervention in one of the critical resources of our society. The states either aren't going to or can't work it out among themselves, so the federal government had to step in to enforce a solution.